Breakups suck. And I'm getting so many emails from you people wanting to know, how do you stop thinking about someone? How do you stop missing someone? How do you move on? Well, stick with me and I'll give you my tips. Hey everyone, I'm Renee Slansky. I'm a professional dating and relationship coach, and I help you build the relationship that you desire and deserve. But what I want to talk about specifically in this video is, how do you stop thinking about someone? How do you stop missing someone? How do you just turn off your brain and your heart so that you can get the closure and really move on? Because let's be honest, when you break up with someone, it's devastating, right? There's so many emotions and feelings going around. It's absolutely awful. Next to death, it's probably, the next worst thing that can happen. The only problem is that they haven't died, they're still alive, and you're alive, and you've got to kind of exist and pretend they don't exist, but you can't deny the history and the feelings that you have. And so what we do is our mind plays havoc on us, our heart goes into overdrive, and we almost kind of send ourselves insane because we don't want to miss them, but we can't help it. And it's like, if we could just flick a switch and turn off our brain, then that would be amazing. So I really want to give you my personal sort of practical tips to help you actually move on, to help you actually stop thinking about him, which won't happen overnight. But I believe that if you do these things, then it will actually happen a lot faster rather than just expecting it to happen or not doing anything at all. Now, the first thing is this: missing someone is basically a state of mind. Now, that's something to be excited about because it means that we are able to change that state of mind. When we miss someone, we're obviously missing them because we no longer have their presence, okay? Their lack of their presence in our life, or they're absent, basically means that we have a reason to miss them, okay? Because they're no longer in our world. Now, we can't change that, okay? The solution to missing somebody isn't about then having them re-enter your life, okay? It's all about changing your state of mind so that you don't associate their absence in your life with the emotional state of missing them, or the emotional turmoil of missing them. Now, the way that we do that is we need to kind of renew our mind. What we need to do is we need to, number one, be conscious of what we are thinking, okay? What we tend to do when we're missing someone is we indulge in those thoughts, okay? We kind of allow them to take us on a tangent, and we kind of think about all those memories, and we go, well, what if? The reason why we do that, the reason why we indulge in those thoughts, the reason why we go on down that tangent mentally with them and allow ourselves to go through those emotions even though it's killing us, is because it makes us still believe that we can have that connection to them. And we gravitate to what we're familiar with, even if it is painful, okay? And sometimes, especially if you haven't got closure, or maybe you're not even wanting closure, because that's sometimes what we feel in a relationship as well. On one hand, we don't want to feel like crap, but on the other hand, we know that once we get better, it means that we have literally moved on and they're no longer in our life. And a part of us probably doesn't even want to move on because we're still emotionally attached to what we had with that person. But you need to remember that in your thought process, whatever you water is what grows. So if you're constantly allowing yourself to indulge in those thoughts of missing him, and to basically water that emotion of missing him, then that is what's going to grow. I used to catch myself when I was thinking about an ex, when I'm driving along and all of a sudden something triggers that memory of him, or, someone says something or a song comes on, all of a sudden, it's like when they're out of your life, everything reminds you of them. It's like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And it's horrible, right? Because you're like, why? You don't want to feel that you have to lock yourself away from the world or do an extreme behavior in order to be able to move on and forget about this person. You're not going to forget about them, probably for as long as what you live. What we're trying to do is not deny that that person exists, but rather change the emotive and mental state that you have associated with that person's absence in your life. And the only way that we're going to do that is if we start to build new neurons and pathways in your brain that is actually going to build positive energy around the absence of their presence in your life. So by catching yourself and actually be aware of what your thoughts are doing, and then choosing something positive that is going to get you further towards the healing and further towards the progress, then that is where you're going to start really breaking that negative habit and retraining your brain to not miss them as such. So what I personally used to do is when I was, driving somewhere and I used to think about him, I used to say, no, Renee, stop thinking about him, think about something else. Now, it's easy to just go, no, Renee, don't do that. And then you're just like, but I want to. What I do is I actually used to replace that mental thought with then a physical action, okay? Because it's almost like you're distracting your brain. Now, that physical action might be something like, I'm going to change the radio station. I'm going to then, okay, what's my to-do list for this week? I'm going to get up and I'm going to do 20 squats. I'm going to go and drink a glass of water. If you can actually replace that thought, okay, once you've caught it, and then replace it with some sort of positive physical action, then what you're doing is you're retraining your brain to go, hang on a second, I need to now do something different, okay? And it's like you're interrupting that pattern within your brain, and that's what we want to do. We want to have a pattern interrupt inside our brain, and then we want to replace it with a positive habit that will eventually give us a new emotion or a new kind of little neuron branch inside our brain, so that we no longer have this cycle of thinking about this same person over and over again. Now, this is something that does take time. It does take discipline. So I suggest having someone keep you accountable if you struggle with keeping yourself accountable. And don't beat yourself up if, again, you do think about that person. I know I've mentioned that in other videos before. It also takes 21 days. So if you can really kind of be strict with yourself for 21 days, where you think, okay, for 21 days, I'm going to be really conscious of my thoughts. I'm going to really make an effort to not think about him. And when I do, because look, we can't stop our brains from going down there, but we can monitor our brains, and then we can catch our brains and then go, hang on a second, change my thought, pattern interrupt. Another good way to stop missing somebody and to stop thinking about them is definitely to remove kind of reminders of them, so that you're not having this constant physical reminder of them not being in your life anymore. Whether it's photos, whether it's Facebook and social media accounts. I've done a video on Facebook stalking, so check that out as well. Whether it's just certain things that you held on to that he gave you, that you really need to let go of. What I did when I went through my big breakup is I literally burnt all the photos. I got rid of the photos, and I actually got rid of any sort of gifts that he gave me. Do you need to do that in certain circumstances? No, especially if it's stuff that you're still kind of using, and that it's really something that's actually practical in your life. But if it is going to be a trigger, then put it out of sight until it is no longer a trigger. And there's something really symbolic about letting go of that person that's no longer in your life, when you're able to let go of whatever that physical reminder is, whether it's a piece of jewelry, whether it is a photo, whether it's a letter, whether it's even going through your social media account and deleting those couple photos. Make your life easier. Like, seriously, don't make it harder for yourself by having all these triggers around you. Maybe you need to go and mix up your room a little bit. Maybe you need to go and redecorate. I'm not saying go and spend lots of money. All I'm saying is shift up your physical and visual environment so that you don't have these constant reminders of him, which are going to trigger that thought and then, of course, that emotion of missing him. And lastly, shift your focus to tangible tasks. We know that, we can be in our own brain and we can be overthinking things, and we tend to do that more when we don't have our hands busier. We all know that doing something that doesn't actually require a lot of thinking means that our thoughts will probably tend to drift back to that person. So what you want to do, if you're going to go and do a task as such to kind of distract yourself, make sure it's something that actually involves you to be consciously aware of what you're doing, okay? Whether it's learning a new language, whether it's learning a new skill, whether it's actually listening to somebody else and their problems, okay? If you can actually do things in your world that will distract you and require you to be mentally and emotionally present in that moment, then it's going to be a lot easier to be able to take the focus off that person that is no longer in your life. And it means that once again, you're going to be learning to train your brain to actually survive without the person and realize that you can create emotional positive happiness in other ways as well, and not just associate happiness with having that person in your life. So there you go, guys. They were good tips, weren't they? Yeah. Okay. All right, guys, that's it for me. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I do videos Thursdays and Tuesdays, and I have my blog as well, which has so many articles and tips and events and everything on there, thedatingdirectory.co. In the meantime, give me a thumbs up, tell your friends, and no, actually, seriously, if you have a friend that can't help move on, then tag them in this video because maybe it'll really, really help them, okay? All right, that's it for me. Bye for now.